On this week's episode of SEO Lunch, Matt's not in the studio, so I take control, and we're going to go over the anatomy of a blog post. Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of SEO Lunch. I'm your host Dan, and as you can tell if you're a fan of the show, my cohort Matt is not here today. But that's okay because you love me, and we're going to throw it around a little bit from usual. So a little pause for the cause, guys. Please do subscribe to us at YouTube at Slocum Studio, or subscribe to our blog at slocumstudio.com/subscribe. We're actually trying to hit 10,000 fans right now. It's a lofty goal that I created, I know, but I know we can do it. And I thank you guys for your support. We're going to try something a little different today with SEO Lunch. So typically what happens is we go to inbound.org and we look at the latest in inbound marketing news, tips and tricks, search engine optimization tips, as well as just looks at content creation, content curation. On the topic of that last subject, though, the content creation, we always talk about things that other people are doing, but we don't really help you practice it, especially if you're a small business and you have created your website and you just want to create great blog content for other people to click on. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at how to create that great blog post. So looking here down below on my screen here, we're going to start right from the top, and we're going to start right with the headline. So the headline is one of the most important parts because this is the first thing people are going to see. And for all intents and purposes, this is where Google's going to look from an initial search perspective. So we're going to actually use the idea here as our blog post. So let's go ahead and type the anatomy of a great blog post. Cool. There we go. All right. So I want to mention a couple things about the headline right now. In a recent episode of the show, we talked about a few good practices for headline creation. One of them is how many superlatives you have in your headline. Here you'll notice that we have one. We have great here, right? So if we wrote like great, awesome, I can type, wonderful blog post here, there's all this stuff everywhere, right? And it's a mess. And people aren't going to click on it as easily or as readily as if you just write great. The other thing that usually helps, here it may or may not make sense, but I'll type it in anyways to give you folks an idea or kind of a jumping off point, is adding numbers to it helps a lot. How about this? 5 tips. Sounds better, right? 5 tips in the anatomy of a great blog post. So now we have that number that's always good and helpful to folks. The bigger the better in some cases because they can use it as a resource. We always talk about our resource of the week, right? And this is kind of what's going on here. Now, I want you to notice right below this, we have something called a permalink. So a permalink is actually going to be what the website is. So if I go ahead and type http Slocum Studio, yada, 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 / anatomy of a great, awesome, as I typed it incorrectly, blog post, that's what's going to show up is going to be our page that we're creating here, the finished product. But in a lot of cases, you might not want that to be the case. You might want to simplify it. You may want to make it look a little different for Google's search algorithm, and you can change it a little bit if you'd like. So we can go ahead and here and add 5 tips, anatomy of a great blog post. But if people are just searching for it and you just want to know about creating a good blog post, you could change this to create a great blog post, and that would be the name of your link. And this also helps with Google's search algorithm when it's looking. You don't want to veer off too far because that tends to get a little spammy, a little black hat. We talk about bad black hat tips and tricks that you shouldn't be practicing, and that's one of them. Don't make it something really crazy and weird. We'll use some other examples later to talk about that a little bit. The next thing we want to talk about is actually the content. So you have this article, you've thought about it, you've brainstormed, you've come up with a great content piece you want to talk about. Now you actually have to create the post. And there's a few tips and tricks I can show you here to kind of help your post get seen by the internet and sort of get people to stay on your page and continue contributing and reading your other blog posts. So typically we have here, this is what your bar would look like. We have the kitchen sink button here, so you can tap on that or click on that and it will take you right here. And you're going to notice where it says paragraph. Headings, like heading 1 and heading 2, hit better on Google's algorithm. So if you want to break up your content pieces, you can put in headings. So I can write, creating a good headline And then it goes back to paragraph, you'll notice, and I can write this is the content portion or something like that, just as an example here. And that's good. So Google is going to more heavily rely on the H1s and the H2 tags. So this creating a good headline here, if I created an H2 right here, about permalinks, why not? This is content about permalinks. This would be sort of how Google ranks your page. So the H1s and the H2s take precedent over the content pieces in there overall. So you want to make those headlines hit, and you also want to make it easy for people reading through your page to find exactly what they're looking for. Because chances are good they searched for your page for a very specific purpose, and what they were looking for may be one paragraph in a larger piece. So you always want to make it easy for them to find it and make it easy for Google to find you as well. The next thing I want to talk about is linking. Linking's always a good idea. WordPress makes it very, very easy to do. So let's go ahead and create another line here and say, subscribe to us. Obviously, this is not what you should be writing in your page like right here, but just to give you the example. And I can actually create a link. Create a link here, and I can write, I can link it to slocumstudio.com/subscribe. And I can put the alt title text here as subscribe to Slocum Studio. Alt text is always helpful as well. If you have a smaller number of blog posts, we have a ton at the studio here, as you can imagine, with all the video content we have and blog content we have. You can actually find it down below here. That's an important note. And you can click on that, and it will auto-create that link for you, which makes it even easier. But we can just add the link here. And now we have a link created for subscribe to us on our page so that somebody can click right there and kind of peruse through your website. And this is great because it keeps people on your website. It keeps them exploring other parts of your website where they might not have gone otherwise. And it helps them find other sections of your website that you might have subscribe links or sort of, buys or sells, which is great. And we'll talk about that a little bit now. So along with linking like that, you want to link to your own site. You can link to others, but there's potential that Google might see that as something problematic. Like you're just linking here and it's, it's not a natural link, and they may hit you for that, and your site may not rank as well. Linking inside your page is always a better idea because it keeps people right in your website. And as you create content, like let's say 5 tips in the anatomy of a great blog post is your very first piece, you won't have really any other blog posts to link to. But let's say you're 10 articles deep. You have some other things going on here, and you can actually link back to this article, the 5 tips in the anatomy of a great blog post, from another one. So people can click on it and go right to this part of your website, which is wonderful, right? You want people to see your stuff. Additionally, on your page itself, put on some call to actions. There are wonderful plugins out there. On our other show, Press This, we look at plugins for contact forms like Contact Form 7 and Gravity Forms. All this is very specific to WordPress, by the way. And these allow you to create subscribe blocks and things like that on your page below your content, which is always a great place to put it right after your article. Put your comments below your article. The top right, right over here, of your website is always usually a good place to put call to actions and subscribe links as well. That's where people will be looking to go to log into a page or to subscribe to a page naturally. Just like when you walk into a store, your natural inclination is actually to look to the right. Same thing with web design. There's a method to the madness. So now let's talk about a little bit more technical stuff. The first thing I want to talk about is we are a WordPress-based design studio, and we always talk about WordPress on the show. And the reason we do that is it's already pre-built to work really well with search engines like Google. It's just really well made. The way the CMS or content management system that is WordPress operates generates a lot of things for you, like the XML sitemap. You don't have to really know what that is specifically, but know that when you create your website with WordPress, it makes it easier for Google to crawl around and actually find your website, crawl through your pages, and rank you right on the algorithm, right in the front page. So that's always good. It's also just very easy to use. As you can see from my computer screen here, if you're new to WordPress or you're just starting, it's a very, very simplified interface to get into and to interact with. The next kind of more technical thing I want to talk about is the actual search engine optimization of your page. So we've spent the majority of this time so far talking about sort of tips to create great content and do some good inbound marketing, linking to friends, things like that. But now I want to talk about specifically the technical aspect of it, and that's where we're going here. So at the bottom of this post right here, or this add a new post page, we have WordPress Seo by Yoast. Now this is a great plugin. It's actually a free plugin for WordPress. If you want to know more about these kind of plugins, we do talk about them in one of our earlier episodes of Press This. We can link it potentially right here in the show notes so you can get right over there. But WordPress Seo by Yoast makes it very easy to create some great search engine kind of tweaks to your website, to your page, I should say. My apologies. So right now you're going to notice here it says 5 tips in the anatomy of a great blog post, Slocum Design Studio, and it has the link with the actual numbered based permalink, right? Where this is going to differ, first of all, when you've saved the page here, that permalink will show up at the top. But the other thing about it too is you notice that there's a lot of text in there, and it may not be the most readable thing ever. You can actually change this so that when you search for it on Google, it looks different than it actually does on the page. So though it will still say 5 tips in the anatomy of a great blog post when you're on the page itself reading it, down below here we can change the SEO title to anything we want. We could change it to 100 great recipes for pizza sauce. Now, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, this is absolutely a terrible idea because this web post has absolutely nothing to do with 100 great recipes for pizza sauce. But you could do that just to give you that idea. And then when you looked on Google, it would look just like this. But let's say we just wanted to write the anatomy of a blog post. This is what you'll see on Google. When you click on it here, boop, it would take you to the page and it would say 5 tips in the anatomy of a great blog post. Similarly, the meta description goes below the text. So you notice at the snippet preview here on this computer screen that there's nothing written down here. And typically when you search for something on Google, it would show up specifically as, this is a thing, or this is what this does. And we can type whatever we'd like here. By default, it will just take the first piece of your text and just throw it in there, which isn't always the best idea. So we can write something specific like, this article details 5 steps to creating great content and blog posts. Now when you click on it, it's going to go right there. Tips and tricks galore. Now this sounds ridiculous, I know, but just to give you an idea, this is what it looks like when you were creating that page. So just don't be spammy about your page. Follow, write what you would want to write. Proofread what you've written. Read it out loud. Have a friend or family member or even a colleague read it out loud to kind of get an idea of the flow of the article. Make sure it's broken up well. You want to have more headings than less headings up here. You want to have pictures on there. You could embed video. All these things are really wonderful ways to make your website sort of pop and make people stay on your page. There's nothing worse than just reading a novel of text with no sort of headings or images. It just gets really boring, and people are likely to bounce and not read your content and get addicted to your website. So thanks a lot for listening, guys. I really hope you liked it. I know it was a change of pace, but here's what I want you to do. I'd like you to go to our YouTube comments below on this page at YouTube, or in the blog comments below if you're reading this on the website and watching the video embedded there. And I want you to tell me what you thought about this content, because we always do articles and things like that. Was it more helpful? Was it less helpful than what we typically do? Would you like a good mix-up? Are there other tips that I might have missed? I'm trying to get this done within 10-15 minutes for your lunch break. So if there was something I missed, let me know. Maybe we can add it to another episode in the future. Let us know, guys. Subscribe at Slocum Studio on YouTube or subscribe at slocumstudio.com/subscribe as well. Thank you so much, guys.